right, so 9.6. So in part 1, we talked about the discriminant, which told us how many solutions we have. So if we look at B, we have x squared minus 16 equals 0. We're not actually solving. We're just trying to figure out how many times is our graph going to cross our x-axis, or how many solutions will this have when we solve it. So we always want to start off with saying, what does A equal? What does B equal? And what does C equal? So on this one, what does A equal?
1.
1. And then what about B? If there is no middle term, it would be what?
0.
0. And then C would equal negative 16. And then we're going to plug in to our formula. So B squared minus 4AC. So if we plug that in, we get 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times C, which is negative 16. And then simplify. What is 0 squared?
0.
0. And then a negative times a positive times a negative gives us a positive. And then 4 times 1 times 16 is 64. And what is 0 plus 64?
64.
64. That is your discriminant. And now we want to know how many solutions are we going to have?
2.
2, because it's a positive. 2 real solutions. Okay. All right, looking at D, same thing. So 3x squared minus 5x plus 21. What does A equal?
3.
3. What does B equal?
5.
How about negative 5? Careful of those negatives. And what about C?
21.
21. Plug in what we know. So B squared, so negative 5 squared minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is 21. So be careful when you do this in your calculator. Make sure you're putting parentheses around that negative, because otherwise it's going to leave it a negative. But we know a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay. So what is negative 5 squared?
25.
25. Then we have negative 4 times 3, which is 12, or negative 12. And negative 12 times 21 is a negative 252. Yep, thank you. And what's 25 minus 252?
Negative 227.
Good. So there's your discriminant. Since it's negative, how many solutions are we going to have? 0. Yep, thank you. 0 real solutions. Okay. So that was what you guys were supposed to do yesterday. A lot of you have already finished it. A couple of you have it started. And there's a couple of you that haven't done any of it. So make sure you get that started today. This assignment should not take you long. Okay. All right, today's assignment, I'm going to slide this up, was using the quadratic formula. There's a good handful of you that have not watched this video. Watch this video. It's a little bit longer, but you're going to want to watch it, I promise. Okay. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. You need to know this formula. This formula is never going to go away. Okay. The nice thing is you've already done half of this formula. Yesterday, let's pick something other than green, b squared minus 4ac. Well, that's your discriminant. That's what you were doing. Okay. So we're just going to go one step further with it. So your video has these 3 examples on it. So let's go down and do this word problem. Okay, a rocket is launched from the top of a 70-foot cliff with the initial velocity of 160 feet per second. The height h of the rocket after t seconds is given by the equation h equals -16t squared plus 160t plus 30. How long after the rocket is launched will it be 10 feet from the ground? If it's 10 feet from the ground, what does that make our height? Yes, 10. So this tells us that h equals 10. So if we plug that in, we have 10 equals -16t squared plus 160t plus 30. Oop. Okay, before we can use quadratic formula, we have to be equal to 0. So what do we need to do?
Subtract the 10 from the 30.
Good. Subtract the 10 from the 30. So we have -16t squared plus 160t plus 20 equals 0. Okay. So you could potentially factor this. Okay. But these are larger numbers. We could pull out a GCF. But let's just keep everything the way it is. The nice thing about the quadratic formula is it will always work on any quadratic. Okay. Even if it's not factorable. So first step, we want to figure out what is A equal, what is B equal, and what is C equal. So what is A?
-6.
Good, -16. What is B?
160.
160. And what about C?
20.
20. And now we're going to plug into our formula. So I'm going to rewrite that formula because the more times you write it, the more likely you're going to remember it. So we have x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, so we're going to plug in what we know. So x equals negative. What's our value for b?
$160.
160 plus or minus the square root. All right, b squared. So you just said b was 160 squared minus 4 times, what's our a?
-16.
-16 times our c, 20. And this is going to all be divided by 2 times a, so -16. All right, so x equals, let's simplify what we know. We have -160 plus or minus the square root. 160 squared is going to give us 25,600. And then if we take -4 times -16 times 20, we get a positive 1,280. And we're all divided by -32. Okay, so order of operations, we're still going to simplify this inside. So if we add those like terms, we get x equals -160 plus or minus the square root of 26,880 divided by -32. Okay. So a lot of times when we do word problems, it's going to ask us to go ahead and round. Okay. Every other problem you're doing, it's going to want it to be left as an exact simplified radical expression, which is what we saw in the examples in the Edpuzzle video, okay? On this one though, since it's an application, we're gonna go ahead and do a decimal. So if I take the square root of that 26,880, we get approximately, let's see, we have negative 160 plus or minus, let's see, I'm gonna round to the nearest whole number, so 164. All over negative 32. But now we want to get two answers. So we're going to break this up into two equations. So this becomes x equals negative 160 plus 164 divided by negative 32. And x equals negative 160 minus 164 divided by negative 32. Okay. Here's the thing, you can't plug this all in your calculator at once. If you do, it's going to do this division first, which will mess you up. So be careful about that. If you want to plug it in all at once, you need to make sure you put parentheses around your numerator. Okay, but we could do this math. Negative 160 plus 164. That gives us 4 over negative 32. If we wanted to leave that as a fraction, we could. X equals negative 1/8. But we're going to change it to a decimal. And let's say it's approximately negative 0.125. Okay. And then if we do our second one, we have negative 160 minus 164 equals negative 324 divided by negative 32, which is approximately 10.125. So here's my question. Are both of these your answer?
It's a positive one. 'Cause
It's
to
just
know how
the
many
positive
seconds.
one. Good, because this, we can't be negative. Okay, because we're talking about time. Okay. Alrighty.